I'm Nikki Jovikic from LookUpStrata. On the 18th of September 2025, we hosted the webinar Strata Management in a Changing Environment, a Challenge or an Opportunity with Michael Teys from Michael Teys Strata Advisory. We had an incredible turnout and so many insightful questions from strata managers across the country. The response was overwhelming, and while we covered a lot during the session, there wasn't simply enough time to address every question. We didn't want to leave those conversations unfinished, so Michael and I caught up again to record this special Q&A session. In this follow-up, we explore the issues that strata management businesses are facing right now, including recruitment and retention of quality staff, balancing rising costs and competitive pressures, offshoring and the role of technology, and the impact of regulatory shifts like changes to insurance commissions, plus how private equity, vertical integration, and the industry consolidation might reshape the sector. It's a wide-ranging conversation that gets into both the challenges and the opportunities for firms navigating this environment. I hope you find this session just as valuable as the webinar, so let's get started. Our strata management company views the current environment as an opportunity and is focusing on delivering real value to clients while ensuring the basics are done well. The most significant barrier is finding the right managers who fully understand the role and can support owners at a higher level. How can a strata management company promise new clients a great experience when it's increasingly complex to find and recruit staff who genuinely align with this standard of service?
Nikki, that's an interesting question. And I think the premise is wrong. I don't think finding and recruiting staff is the key issue. If someone's finding it difficult to recruit staff and keep staff, it probably says something about their internal processes and systems. And I think this is one of the reasons contributing to the very high turnover of strata managers that we're seeing relative to other numbers in different industries in Australia. So we're at about 33% turnover compared to all industries at about 7%. So we've got a real problem about what we're asking people to do and what tools and support we're providing to the people to do it. So I'd suggest to the strata manager who's asked that question that they look inside their tent first before worrying about what's outside the tent and how difficult it is to get people in the tent. Because they need to define their systems and then allocate the right jobs to the right people with the right tools. And I think when people start to get that alignment, then recruiting and keeping staff becomes easier. It follows then that client satisfaction should rise.
We're a medium-sized strata management business in Victoria, and we're struggling to balance rising wages, tech investments, and the pressures to reduce insurance commissions. Is there a sustainable model that smaller firms can adopt to stay competitive without burning out their team?
Yes, Nikki, this is a problem for so many, but it really resonates, I think, with the small to medium practices that don't have the budget and the resources and the time to be able to invest in operating systems and training and supervision that is necessary to do all of these things that are expected of strata managers today. One of the things that I think people can look at, apart from overviewing their systems and getting some external help to develop those systems, one of the things that I think we need to look at in strata is specialisation. And some very successful strata management firms around Australia operating at very high levels of profitability only do one type of strata. One of my clients only does townhouses. Another of my clients only does commercial property, commercial strata property. And both of those companies are small companies, but highly profitable. And they're able to refine what they do, train their people just to know one thing. So, for example, the person that just runs the company that just runs townhouses, they don't need to know about lifts. They don't need to know about building management. And they're representing a very big part of the strata market of Australia, which is often overlooked. So I think specialisation is something we need to really think about. And we can specialise according to geography. We can specialise according to building type and form. We can specialise according to use. And maybe even age, because I think, we're now getting to a stage where new buildings have different needs to medium-aged buildings that have different needs to older buildings. So some sophistication there in looking at what you're taking on, I think, can help people.
So, Michael, in a company that's considering setting up a few different portfolios within their company, is it worthwhile for them to separate out into different departments and have different staff that specialise in certain areas?
I think it is, and that's a great idea. You can have small, medium, and large portfolios, and then you can really articulate a point of difference to the prospective client. So when they come, they feel heard, they feel understood, they feel like they will belong in a portfolio, particularly for the smaller schemes, the medium-sized schemes, which sometimes feel lost, and they see documentation which is over the top for their needs, and it's overwhelming. So I think if you could specialize, you would have a real point of difference within a firm. The other thing about specialization is I'm interested in seeing specialization in terms of what people do. So you've got core management is a specialty. You could have repairs and maintenance as a specialty. You could have remediation of buildings, defects as a specialty. And as our building stock gets older, I think, and there is a specialty emerging for retrofitting, renewing, indeed perhaps replacing. So I think there's a whole range of ways that we can specialize. And as Strata moves from an occupation to a profession, this is something that professionals do. There are general practitioners, but there are also specialists, and you don't need a degree necessarily to be a specialist. You can become a specialist by practice. But I think you've genuinely got to focus on what it is you do it incredibly well. And the hard part about specialization is saying no to things that don't fit within your specialty. That's easier within a firm where you can flick something to someone else who might be going down a specialization path.
There's a lot of buzz around AI for task automation, minute taking, and compliance tracking. But what are the real world risks that strata firms should be considering before integrating AI into their workflows?
Yes, AI is a very polarizing topic, as I wrote about in a recent blog of mine. I think when strata managers are looking at AI, there's two dimensions to look at. Firstly, there's AI, which is, the classic chat GPT, interpretive type use of AI. And the thing about that is when you upload something to AI, it's gone. So, people will tell you that it can be deleted, but that's actually not true. If you look at the terms and conditions of the AI providers, that data, once it's there, is gone. So people need to be careful about their intellectual property. They also need to be careful about their data and sensitive data, private data that might be being uploaded to the internet. So getting some advice from an AI specialist about how your data is ring-fenced, and it is possible to keep it private, but that's something that, a lot of people all around the world are ignoring. However, AI is here, it's not going away, and we're going to see more strata using AI in the future, and it will move from interpretive AI to agentic AI, which is about actually doing things and getting things done automatically without human intervention.
In New South Wales, the move to phase out insurance commissions is making waves across the country. Have you seen any data on how this will impact management fees nationally? Should we expect fees to rise proportionally, or will firms absorb the cost?
This is the $64 million question at this time. Look, there's no data out yet. The Productivity Commission of New South Wales has been briefed by the New South Wales government to look at this very question. And I understand that their report is not too far away. And they've been very active in talking to key people, including owners, academics, and managers. So that report will be very interesting. I don't think it matters anymore what the government does, because SCA, both in New South Wales and the ACT, is already committed to eliminating commissions. But more importantly, some of the companies within those groups are already doing it. And I'm mentioning particularly in the ACT, very large management companies, including Vantage, for example, are quite open about the fact that they've been on this pathway for some time. And I've definitely got small to medium strata management firm clients that are doing it as well. So the numbers are early. What they're showing is as long as you cut the right deal with the broker, then strata fees might stay the same. There'll be additional fees for processing, but it's really a question of what deal you can do with the broker. And I think that's going to be pivotal. I don't think brokers are going to be regulated in this current round, so they're going to be at large. It will be up to owners, corporations, and strata managers. If they decide to use a broker, they might decide to go direct. But if they decide to use a broker, it will be up to them to pin them down. And I'm certainly aware of some companies that are looking at AI-driven brokerage that is going to be a cut price brokerage to try and outdo some of the traditional brokers, to outperform and undercut some of the traditional brokers. So that's all up in the air. The interesting thing about the New South Wales government on insurance commissions is the Premier, although the bureaucracy is in favour of eliminating commissions and has been very plain about that, the Premier could well flip. Premier Minns has got a habit of flipping. He's done that twice recently on very significant property management related issues. And if he thinks that this is going to play badly on levies, cost of living, housing crisis, then he could easily say, hey, listen, we're just going to put this on hold for a couple of years. But as I say, even if he doesn't do that, and I think if he did, it would be a retrograde step for strata management. But even if he did it, I don't think it matters anymore, because the leaders, both large and small companies, are already doing this. So everyone's going to have to ultimately follow suit, I think. It's a question of how long that takes. But I think, you know, in the foreseeable future, insurance commissions will be lost to strata managers.
Now, arguably, there are some states across Australia where SCA isn't as supportive of the ban on insurance commissions. What will happen in those states, do you think, Michael?
Look, I think that's going to be very troublesome for strata management. One of the 5 key elements of professionalisation of any occupation which seeks to become a profession is that there be a strong national body that represents the profession or the want-to-be profession. Now, at the moment, we don't have that. We have a federation of entities under the umbrella of SCA with very different views on a number of key issues. So it's very fragmented. And unfortunately, that is holding back the brand. It's holding back the national push towards professionalisation. So I think if Queensland and Victoria and Western Australia don't come on board with these things, then we've got more problems ahead. SCA's had a pretty rough time to date because of the media attention about insurance commissions and related party transactions of key members of the board of that entity here in New South Wales and elsewhere. But I think unless they can get together on these things, there's real problems. There are mumbling and murmuring of various groups going their own way and forming new associations with different policies and procedures and regulations. But look, that would be a tragedy if that happened. So we need a strong national body. I hope that SCA can become that. Once again, I think it used to be that. It's strayed somewhat from that leadership role, but I'd like to see it come back to being a unified body that could speak with one voice on these very important issues.
One of our biggest challenges is staff retention. Younger managers are leaving the industry within 12 to 18 months. Do you have any suggestions for restructuring workload or incentives that actually help with retention, especially for smaller firms without large corporate backing?
Staffing is the number one problem, I think, for strata managers at the moment. And part of that is looking internally to how your systems and processes support managers. One of the very interesting things to come out of the Macquarie benchmarking report. And I don't think it was the last one. I think it was the one before that. Did a survey of what's important to employees and what do employers think is important to employees. And it was very interesting to chart the differences in perception. So employers think that staff want certain things and employees want different things. And I think that's worth having a look at. Now, that type of study has been replicated in a number of other professional service firms, law firms, auditing firms, and the like. So that's not unusual, but it is something that I think as small business proprietors, people sometimes forget. So it's not always, and very seldom, is the number one thing about money. It will be more about support and training than it will be about money. So in terms of support and training, I think people need to look at what they're doing for people. And I think they need to really critically analyze what's the quality of the support and training that they're giving. A lot of times, you know, and I've been guilty of this myself, where I've run training sessions for strata management firms, and I've looked at the group and I thought, you know, there's at least half of the group that ought not to be here because this doesn't matter to them. You know, so we've got to get away from training for training's sake. And the second thing is we've got to get away from training because it's free. Now there's an element of self-interest in that because I provide training as on a fee for service basis. But I think we, for the longest time, have turned to our suppliers for training because it's been free. And apart from some conflict issues, it's just not good training. Because you're being trained to be a supplier, not to be a manager. It's got to come from a management perspective. Training has to be about how to be a manager. Now, you need to know about law, you need to know about accounting, you need to know about buildings, but you don't need to be a builder or an accountant or a lawyer, and you don't need to be trained in what they do. You need to be trained in management. So I think to answer the question, owners should look at their internal systems for support and training of people and be able to demonstrate that in a very professional way. That will help recruit people. It will also help retain people.
How do you see vertical integration evolving in the strata space? If a company does management, maintenance, insurance broking, and utilities billing, what are the risks for owners and committees, and what protections or transparency measures should be in place?
That's a very, very complex question. Vertical integration, of course, is the practice of an agent going down the expenses of a owner's corporation or a body corporate and forming companies to do those things. So, for example, repairs and maintenance, fire inspection, writing reports. Some strata managers even have interest in law firms. So that's what vertical integration is. Now, in the current review and law reform that's going on right across Australia, conflicts of interest are in scope. But I don't think we're going to get to a stage where vertical integration will be outlawed. I think that's going to be a bridge too far for government. So the question then is, how does strata management firms manage that conflict of interest? And at the moment, they're not managing it well at all. They're using different names and different contracts, and they're not telling people properly and making full disclosure so that people can make informed consent about that. So vertical integration is really problematic, but it's here to stay, I think. It's hard to imagine that beyond insurance brokerage, which might be banned, the governments might say you can't have an interest in an insurance brokerage company. But beyond that, it's hard to see that they're going to stop companies having facilities management divisions and having all these other related parties. It's almost impossible for someone who's working under a vertical integration model to satisfy the law. You know, I was dealing with a very experienced lawyer just last week who said, you know, the root of all evil comes from related party transactions. And I think we've seen that and we've studied that quite a bit in the context of developers and the related party conflicts that can arise out of development of strata property. We need more research about that in relation to strata management. Now, Dr. Nicole Johnson has been commissioned by the New South Wales government to do some research into this. and her report is imminent, and it's going to be very detailed. It's going to be very hard-hitting, and it's going to bring to the public attention things that have never been discussed before in relation to strata management conflicts. Now, there's going to be press about that, and we'll have a whole new round of discussions, I think, because of this report. I'm told by Nicole that that will be out by Christmas. You know, we need to be ready for this discussion. And people that are engaging in vertical integration need to have good answers ready about how they do it. And I think at the moment it's done very, very poorly. So they're going to have to lift their game on that.
In your experience, are state regulators keeping pace with these structural shifts in the industry, like AI, private equity roll-ups, offshoring, or are strata laws and disclosure rules likely to fall behind?
Look, I think some states are doing better than others. Not surprisingly, New South Wales is the largest state and the one that's had the light shone upon it, is leading the way in this. And I think the Strata Commissioner of New South Wales is doing a very good job. I don't agree with all of the reforms, but there is certainly a lot of energy and a lot of intellect being applied to some very tricky issues. And I think the Strata Commissioner of New South Wales is leading the way. The Victorian law reform process, I think, structurally is poor. A very short time for public comment. An expert panel put together, but questions about you know, their research ability or access to research. And then in Queensland, well, they just do it differently. I'm not sure really what current matters are being aligned and studied across the states. One of the things we miss here, and again, it comes back to a strong national body. One of the things we miss is cross-jurisdictional studies, so that we can see what's happening in Western Australia and compare that to what's happening elsewhere and get best practice defined by actual legislation, not by opinions and by people, you know, saying that they adopt best practice. We don't really know what best practice is in Australia because we haven't studied it by comparatively. We haven't studied much about what we do in each state and compared that to what we're doing in other states and indeed what people are doing around the world. That's become my focus as a researcher. It's very, very interesting to learn how other people approach matters. You know, for example, I found a provision of a South Australian strata law the other day, which I just thought was outstanding, where it said, you know, you are all personally liable for the debts of the strata company. Now, you know, everyone in Australia is liable, but we don't say that. So, you know, there's really some hidden gems in some of the legislation right around the country, and that needs to be studied and looked at. So I think they are falling behind. As to AI, short of privacy, we don't need AI laws in strata. We should just be able to adopt that as a tool in the same way that you use a calculator in the old days or a computer today. Private equity roll-ups, again, is not really a matter for strata laws. It is a matter for disclosure as to who owns your company and what else does that company own. Offshoring is interesting. I think there are some issues that are being missed in offshoring, particularly in New South Wales, where we have licensing requirements, and I'm pretty certain that there's things being done offshore by people that aren't licensed that cross the line from administrative work and is actually strata management work. So that's a problem area where I think we are falling behind, and at least in states with licensing regimes, that needs to be looked at carefully.